Hey guys, so this week I headed out nice and early one morning for sunrise. This is a little area called South Shore in Christchurch. It's sort of this little peninsula area with the estuary on one side and the ocean on the other side. It's got some really great beaches and it's just a great place for getting some sunrise shots. So when I got there, I found this cool little sculpture someone had made from the branches on the beach. And I thought it would make a great subject matter and try and figure out a cool composition and just try out some different kinds of shots. So you can see here, because the sun's just above the horizon, we get some really nice low light, and you can see all this texture in the foreground and the footsteps in the sand, and you also get these nice long shadows that you can use as leading lines in the composition. And on either side of the logs themselves is sort of framed by tufts of grass. They add a little bit of green color to it as well, just adds a little bit of variety to the overall color in the composition. With the sun itself, I'm trying to sort of position it so that the logs are right in front of it, but I'm trying to just move the lens around and just position the sun in different areas on the sticks. So you can see as I move around that you can see the flares coming out in different areas. And it does give a slightly different feel, how much flare it gives or which direction the flare is going. So I ended up trying to sort of get more of a central position for the sun, just poking through there, and it doesn't flare as much, but I think it sort of centers the composition overall, just because if it's right on the apex of these logs, it sort of gives a joining factor in the composition. So you can see the final shot here, and I was really pleased with how the textures look in the foreground. It adds lots of interest, and the way the leading lines work with the shadows. And as I mentioned before, the tufts of grass on either side, they do really just give a little bit of variety and a bit of change to the overall shot. So if you imagine the grass wasn't there at all, it'd be quite a bluey and sort of yellowy shot. There's not, in the terms of the colors, it'd be quite sort of two-tone, but with these little tufts it adds a little green, a little bit orange, a little bit yellow in the little sort of tops of the grass. There's a brown, so it gives a little bit more flavor to the overall color. And in terms of the actual sun itself at the top, I was really pleased with the way that turned out. It just looks like a little shining beacon right in the middle there. At the far end of the beach, across the river opening there, we have this big cliff face. It's from a landslide that's happened some time ago when there's been an earthquake. The way that the sun comes up in the morning, it hits that rock face really nicely, and it really lights up, and it reflects really well against the water there. So it's a nice sort of bright object on the upper half of the frame, and it just shines out as a nice subject. So in this type of situation, I'm quite far distance-wise, I'm quite far from it, and I'm trying to use a long focal length to compress the scene more and increase the size of the cliff in the composition. Now this is a situation where I know I want to get a shot of this cliff, but I'm trying different focal lengths, playing around with different angles, and I don't always get the type of composition I'm trying. It feels like I'm sort of pushing the composition too much and it's struggling to get where I want it to be. So this is an example where it doesn't hurt to experiment. We just try and go low down, go high up, different focal lengths. And I ended up going for a different shot completely in this location that was more really low down, and I focused on the footsteps, so I still got that nice cliff face right at the far end, but overall the shot was completely different than what I was trying most of the time. So I try and keep fairly open when I'm taking shots, constantly being open to different compositions and trying different things. It doesn't hurt if something fails, at least you've tried some other things and you might get a shot that you weren't expecting. So then I moved further down the beach and I'm much closer to the cliff face now, and I was able to try and wrangle the composition I was after. And just because of the closeness I am to the cliff now, for some reason the focal lengths just seem to work a bit nicer, and I was able to compress the scene to the degree I was after. And I think overall the composition was slightly more interesting and dynamic, which helped sort of favor this location than the last location. So you can see on the left hand side there's some hills that sort of swoop up and then up to the big cliffs in the foreground. So there's quite a big distance between them, so you do get the hills on the left have a bit more mistiness on the water, and you can tell the difference in the distances more, and just the overall dynamics of that add a bit more interest to the overall shot. So this location is just round the corner. This is on the riverside now. This is like facing the estuary. So this is a nice flat long area of sand with really shallow water, so you do get quite nice reflections at certain times of the day. But one of the really good things is you're facing towards the Southern Alps of New Zealand, which is towards the west. So I'm using like a nice long focal length to try and bring those mountains into the frame in terms of the proportions against the water. So you're still not going to get them huge because you're right at the east coast here, so they're quite far away, but you can get a little bit, try and get that sort of mountain line across the horizon there, and you do get a nice variety of the types of hills and the shapes, and it just adds that really nice dramatic view on the horizon there. So I hope you liked this week's video, guys. I appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Thanks.